Everyone loves a quiet janitor until the mop hits the floor. When twin black belt brothers decided to humiliate the old man in gray coveralls at their father's dojo, they didn't realize he had spent 2 decades neutralizing threats in the deadliest corners of the world. What happened next took exactly 2 seconds, and then their father walked in with a demand that shattered everything. His name is Marcus Webb, and for the past 3 years, he has been invisible. A 53-year-old janitor, mopping sweat off the mats of the Crescent Moon Dojo, he traded a life of black ops for the quiet rhythm of a mop bucket. He served in Delta Force for 22 years, surviving missions that still have no names. Now, he just wants to be left alone. But the owner's twin sons, Kyle and Kevin, have turned his sanctuary into a proving ground. The question isn't whether Marcus can still fight, it's whether he can stop himself once he starts. The Crescent Moon Dojo sits in a strip mall off Route 19, wedged between a dry cleaner and a vape shop. By day, it's a temple of discipline, filled with the rhythmic thud of bare feet on vinyl mats. By night, after the last student leaves, it transforms into a private kingdom ruled by twin princes who have never been told no. Kyle and Kevin Tanaka are 23 years old, second-degree black belts, and the undisputed heirs to their father's legacy. Their father, Master Hiroshi Tanaka, is a 5th-degree black belt who built this dojo from nothing 30 years ago. He is a granite-faced traditionalist respected by every martial artist in the county. But Master Tanaka is often away, traveling to seminars and tournaments, leaving the twins to manage the day-to-day operations. And manage they do, treating the dojo less like a school and more like a personal playground where they can flex their egos without consequence. The only person who bears the full brunt of their entitlement is the one man who cannot talk back, the janitor. Marcus Webb has spent 3 years in this building, pushing a mop, emptying trash cans, and wiping the fog off the mirrors in the locker room. He wears the same gray coveralls every day, his silver-streaked hair always tucked under a faded ball cap. To the students, he is simply part of the furniture. To the twins, he is a target. They mock his posture. They kick over his mop bucket when no one is looking. They call him old man and joke that he couldn't fight his way out of a wet paper bag. Marcus never responds. That silence, that refusal to flinch, infuriates them. They mistake decades of iron discipline for cowardice. They do not know that before he ever picked up a mop, Marcus Webb spent 22 years in the United States Army's most classified unit. They do not see the vault he is locked inside himself. They only see a retired janitor who mops the sweat off their mats and disappears into the shadows. And for the longest time, that was exactly how Marcus wanted it. But tonight, the air in the dojo is different. The last class has just ended. The students shuffling out into the humid summer darkness. The twins are still buzzing from a hard sparring session, their rash guards soaked, their egos inflated. They spot Marcus in the far corner, methodically wringing out a mop. A cruel grin passes between them. It has been a boring week. They need some entertainment. They saunter over, blocking his path to the utility closet. Kyle, the louder of the two, steps into Marcus's personal space, chest puffed out. "Hey, janitor, you ever think about taking a class? Oh, wait, you need muscles for that. Never mind." Kevin laughs, circling behind him. Marcus says nothing. He simply tries to step around them, clutching the mop handle. But Kevin shoves him from behind, a hard push between the shoulder blades that sends Marcus stumbling forward. "What's the matter, old man? Too scared to even make eye contact?" Marcus steadies himself. He takes a slow, deliberate breath, a technique drilled into him during survival school, a method to cage the animal inside. He turns away again, reaching for his bucket. That act of dismissal, turning his back on a threat, is the ultimate insult to a predator. Kyle's smile vanishes. He lunges forward and grabs the back of Marcus's collar, yanking hard. "I said, look at us when we're talking to you." That single motion, the fistful of fabric, the pressure on his throat, shatters the seal on a 20-year vault. Marcus's body moves before his conscious mind can stop it. In a movement so fast it blurs the fluorescent lights, he drops the mop, seizes Kyle's wrist, and torques it into a vicious joint lock that drives him face first into the mat. Simultaneously, his other arm snakes around Kevin's neck, the blade of his forearm pressing against the carotid arteries. Both brothers hit the floor in a tangled heap, completely immobilized, gasping for air. The sound of their impact echoes through the empty gym like a thunderclap. Marcus holds them there, his breathing steady, his eyes cold as winter steel. The arrogance in the room evaporates, replaced by a primal choking terror. The gym falls absolutely silent, and then through the silence, the front door clicks open. Master Hiroshi Tanaka stepped through the door, his silhouette framed by the streetlight outside. He took 2 steps and stopped, his eyes sweeping the room with the cold precision of a man who instantly reads every detail. His twin sons lay twisted on the mat, one wrist cranked behind his back, the other pinned in a carotid neck restraint. And the man controlling them was the janitor, the quiet, invisible, gray coveralled man nobody ever looked at twice. The silence stretched into agony. Kyle let out a choked whimper. Kevin's face was turning a deep shade of purple. Master Tanaka did not run to his sons. He did not shout. He simply folded his arms across his chest and studied the scene like a curator examining a rare painting. Finally, he spoke. "Release them." Marcus opened his hands. Both twins collapsed onto the mat, coughing, gasping, scrambling backward like frightened crabs. They looked at their father, waiting for the explosion, for the righteous fury of a 5th-degree black belt patriarch. But Master Tanaka wasn't looking at them. His gaze was locked on Marcus, and his expression was utterly unreadable. "That was the most efficient dismantling I have ever seen," Master Tanaka said slowly. His voice was low, gravelly, devoid of anger, not a single wasted movement. Joint lock to the left, vascular restraint to the right. Simultaneous, you disabled 2 trained black belts without receiving a scratch. In less than 3 seconds, he stepped closer, his wooden sandals clicking against the vinyl. "I have not seen technique like that since my grandfather's generation. The generation that fought wars, not tournaments." Kyle propped himself up on one elbow, his face contorted. "Dad, he attacked us. Call the cops." "We were just..." Silence, the word cut like a blade. Master Tanaka didn't even glance at his son. "You cornered a man in my dojo and put your hands on him. I did not raise warriors. I raised playground bullies." He returned his attention to Marcus. "But here's the problem. You are a janitor. You have been cleaning my floors for 3 years. Why?" Marcus remained still, his hands at his sides. The animal inside him was slowly retreating back into its cage. "It's honest work." "It is a cover," Master Tanaka said flatly. "I know a soldier when I see one. I see it in the way you stand. I see it in the economy of your motion. I have wondered for 3 years what you were hiding. Tonight I have my answer." He paused, then dropped the words that froze everything. "I demand that you teach me. Right now. Or I will call the police and tell them you viciously assaulted my sons without provocation." The air left the room. Kevin's head snapped up, his eyes wide with betrayal. "What?" "Dad, you can't be serious. I am deadly serious." Master Tanaka's voice was ice. "The law will believe the owner of a respected dojo and his 2 sons over a nameless janitor who refuses to speak about his past. You will go to jail, and your quiet life will be destroyed. Or you can honor me with a true exchange of combat knowledge. The choice is yours." Marcus Webb had faced ambushes in Fallujah and midnight raids in Kandahar. He had survived firefights and interrogations. But this he had never anticipated. His entire existence for the past 3 years was built on a foundation of invisibility. He had traded a rifle for a mop precisely to avoid moments like this. Now, standing under the glaring fluorescent lights of a suburban dojo, his sanctuary had just become a trap. He looked into Master Tanaka's eyes and saw something dangerous: absolute sincerity. This was not a bluff born of anger. This was a calculated ultimatum from a man who had spent 3 decades perfecting his own art, only to realize that somewhere along the way, he had lost the soul of the warrior. He had produced champions, but he had also produced bullies. And the quiet man in the gray coveralls had just demonstrated a fundamental truth, that real combat has nothing to do with trophies. "You don't know what you're asking," Marcus finally said. His voice was barely above a whisper. "What I showed tonight is not a technique you certify with a belt. It's not something you teach in a seminar." "Then teach it to me now," Master Tanaka said. "Teach me what my grandfather taught his students in occupied Okinawa. Teach me what the special forces taught you. Teach me the real thing." Kyle struggled to his feet, his wrist already swelling. "This is insane. He's a janitor, Dad. A nobody. You're going to believe his cheap theatrics over your own sons?" Master Tanaka turned to face his children. For the first time, a flicker of real deep pain crossed his granite features. "I love you both, but you have used this dojo as a weapon. You have transformed a place of honor into a feeding ground for your egos. Tonight, this man gave you a lesson that I should have given you years ago. And instead of beating him down, I intend to learn from him." He faced Marcus again. "So, will you teach me, or will we do this the hard way?" Marcus measured the distance to the door. He counted the angles. He could be gone in 5 seconds. But running would confirm guilt. Running would destroy the delicate peace he had built. And deeper than that, something else stirred. A long-suppressed part of him that recognized a genuine seeker. Master Tanaka was not like his sons. He was a man standing at the edge of his own failure, desperate to reclaim meaning before it was too late. Marcus made his decision. "If we do this, we do it my way. No audience. The twins leave. You sign a waiver absolving me of all liability. And what I teach you goes no further than these walls." "Ever." Master Tanaka inclined his head slightly. "Agreed." He turned to his sons. "Go home." Now, but Dad, now the single word, left no room for negotiation. The twins exchanged a look of humiliated fury, then stumbled toward the exit. Kevin paused at the door, glaring back. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life," he spat. Then they were gone, swallowed by the night. The dojo fell silent once more. Master Tanaka walked to the weapons rack and lifted a wooden bokken, weighing it in his hands. "My grandfather used to say that the true art is not in the technique, but in the stillness before it. I have forgotten what that stillness feels like." He set the sword down and met Marcus's eyes. "Show me." Marcus rolled his shoulders and stepped onto the mat. The quiet life was dead. The warrior was back. And as he faced the man who had just threatened to destroy him, he understood that the most dangerous battles are never the ones you choose. They are the ones that find you in the silence. Marcus Webb and Master Hiroshi Tanaka faced each other on the empty mat. For a long moment, neither man moved. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the worn vinyl. Tanaka had removed his sandals and stood barefoot, his traditional gi crisp and white, his black belt tied with the precise knot of a man who had worn it for 30 years. Across from him, Marcus remained in his gray coveralls, work boots still on, ball cap pulled low. He hadn't even taken off his watch. To an outsider, it looked like an absurd mismatch. A revered master against a tired janitor. But Tanaka knew better. He had seen the truth in those 3 seconds when his sons hit the floor. "Begin," Marcus said quietly. Tanaka advanced with a textbook front kick, fast and controlled, aiming for Marcus's midsection. Marcus did not block it. He simply pivoted his hips 2 inches to the left, letting the foot sail past his ribcage by a whisper. Before Tanaka could retract his leg, Marcus's hands shot out and caught his ankle. He didn't squeeze, didn't twist. He just held it, demonstrating that he could have shattered the joint. "You're still fighting a tournament," Marcus said, releasing the foot. "In a real fight, you don't attack. You intercept. You don't counter. You preempt. The goal is not to win. The goal is to end it before it starts." Tanaka reset, his breathing steady but his eyes wide. For the next 30 minutes, the dojo became a laboratory of controlled violence. Marcus did not teach flashy combinations. He taught silence. He taught reading the twitch of a shoulder before the punch fires, the shift of weight before a kick launches. He taught economy of motion, the terrifying stillness of a predator who has already mapped every possible outcome. Tanaka absorbed it all, sweat soaking through his gi, his decades of formal training being dismantled and rebuilt from the ground up. But outside, in the darkness of the parking lot, the lesson was taking a darker turn. Kyle Tanaka sat in the driver's seat of his black pickup truck, his swollen wrist throbbing, rage boiling in his gut. Kevin was beside him, furiously scrolling through his phone. "That old man humiliated us," Kyle spat, "and Dad just stood there like he was watching a masterclass. We're the ones who've trained our whole lives. We're the ones who brought this dojo championships." Kevin stopped scrolling. "I found something." He turned the screen toward his brother, a grainy archived news article from 15 years ago. The headline read, "Local man detained after bar fight leaves 3 hospitalized." The man in the mugshot was younger, harder, but unmistakable. Marcus Webb. The article detailed how 3 armed men had attempted to rob a veterans bar, and a single patron had dismantled them all with injuries severe enough to require surgery. No charges were ever filed. The police had called it self-defense. But the article buried a key detail. One of the attackers had permanent nerve damage, and his family had publicly accused the veteran of excessive force. The accusation never went anywhere legally, but it left a stain. "That's our weapon," Kyle said, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "Dad might be starstruck by some washed-up soldier, but the public won't be. We leak this. We tell everyone that a violent, unstable janitor attacked us unprovoked, and that our father is covering it up. We post it online. By morning, this dojo becomes a circus, and that old man's quiet life is over." Kevin hesitated. "What about Dad? This could destroy his reputation too." Kyle's eyes hardened. Dad chose a stranger over his own sons. He made his bed. Back inside the dojo, the session was winding down. Master Tanaka was on his knees, his chest heaving, his gi drenched. He had not landed a single clean strike. Not one. Marcus stood over him, breathing as steadily as if he had just finished a leisurely walk. "You've been chasing belts," Marcus said, "chasing recognition. But fighting isn't about belts. It's about surviving the worst 5 seconds of your life with your soul intact." Tanaka bowed his head low, pressing his forehead to the mat. "I have wasted 30 years teaching children to dance," he whispered. "What you carry? I cannot learn that. I can only witness it. And I am grateful." Marcus reached down and offered his hand. Tanaka took it and rose. For the first time, the granite-faced master looked fragile, almost broken. "I threatened you," Tanaka said. "I forced you into this. Yet you taught me anyway." "Why?" Marcus was silent for a moment. "Because you recognize the truth about your sons. That's more than most fathers ever do. The man you were 30 years ago would have fought me to defend their honor. The man you are tonight chose wisdom over pride. That's the warrior I agreed to teach." The moment of understanding passed between them like a current. But it was shattered by the sound of sirens in the distance. Distant at first, then growing louder, a rising wail that cut through the night and headed straight for the strip mall. Marcus's body tensed, a subtle shift that Tanaka barely caught. "Did you call them?" Marcus asked, his voice flat. Tanaka's face drained of color. "No, I gave you my word." Red and blue lights began strobing through the frosted windows, painting the dojo in alternating flashes of emergency. The sirens died, replaced by the slamming of car doors and the crackle of police radios outside. Marcus looked at the door, then back at Tanaka. "Your sons." It wasn't a question. Tanaka's jaw tightened, and a deep, terrible grief settled into his features. "I raised them to be champions, and instead I raised vipers." He straightened his gi, squaring his shoulders. "I will handle this. I will tell them the truth. You were defending yourself. I witnessed it. I signed a waiver." "This is my dojo, and I will. Your word against theirs," Marcus interrupted. "2 black belts with clean records, and their father who runs a respected martial arts school, versus a janitor with a sealed military file and a history of violence that any half-decent lawyer can dig up. I've seen how this plays out. The system doesn't care about truth. It cares about which story is easier to believe. The front door burst open. Two police officers entered, hands resting on their holsters, their eyes scanning the room. Behind them, barely visible in the doorway, stood Kyle and Kevin Tanaka, their faces masks of feigned victimhood. Kyle was cradling his wrist dramatically. Kevin had somehow produced a visible red mark on his neck, likely self-inflicted. "That's him," Kyle said, pointing a trembling finger at Marcus. "That's the janitor who attacked us. He's dangerous. He's got military training. Please, you have to arrest him before he hurts someone else." The lead officer, a stocky man with a gray mustache, stepped forward. "Sir, I need you to put your hands where I can see them and step away from the other gentleman." Marcus didn't move. He looked at Master Tanaka, and in that single glance, an entire conversation passed between them. Tanaka saw the weight of 2 decades of silent service, the scars hidden beneath cheap coveralls, the profound injustice of a man who had given everything for his country, now being branded a criminal by 2 entitled boys who had never sacrificed a thing. Tanaka stepped forward, placing himself between Marcus and the officers. "Officer, I am Hiroshi Tanaka, the owner of this dojo. There has been a misunderstanding. This man did not attack my sons. He defended himself after they physically assaulted him. I witnessed the entire incident. My sons are lying to you." The officer's eyes narrowed, skepticism etched into his face. Kyle's voice cracked with rehearsed anguish. "He's confused, officer. Our father is in shock. This janitor threatened him too. Please, just check this guy's background. You'll see he's not some innocent cleaner. He's a trained killer." The officer looked at Marcus, then at Tanaka, then back at the twins. The story was messy, contradictory. Standard procedure demanded a cautious approach. "Sir," the officer said to Marcus, "I'm going to need you to come down to the station with us while we sort this out. If what the owner says is true, you'll be released. But right now, we have an assault allegation, and we need to investigate." Marcus Webb closed his eyes. The quiet life. The mop bucket. The 3 years of invisibility. All of it, crumbling under the weight of a lie. He had survived firefights in countries most people couldn't find on a map. He had protected his country's deepest secrets. And now, in a suburban strip mall, he was being undone by 2 boys who had never bled for anything. He opened his eyes and looked at Master Tanaka. "Remember what I taught you," he said. Then he raised his hands slowly, palms open, and walked toward the officers. As the cold metal of handcuffs clicked around his wrists, the twins exchanged a look of triumphant satisfaction. They had won, or so they thought. What they didn't understand was that their father had just witnessed the true cost of honor. And Hiroshi Tanaka, 5th-degree black belt, founder of the Crescent Moon Dojo, had finally reached his breaking point. As the police led Marcus out into the flashing lights, Tanaka walked to the front desk. He picked up his phone. He began scrolling through his contacts until he found a name he hadn't called in 20 years. A retired colonel, a man who owed him a life debt from a long-ago incident in Okinawa. Then, he opened the dojo's social media page and began typing a message that would set everything on fire. The holding cell at the county police station smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant. Marcus sat on a cold metal bench, his wrists still red from the cuffs, staring at the cracked ceiling tiles. He had been here for 3 hours. No phone call. No explanation. Just the muffled sound of officers talking in low voices beyond the steel door. He knew how this worked. They were running his prints, digging into a sealed military file that would yield nothing but redaction blocks. The quiet life was over. The only question was what would rise from its ashes. Across town, inside the Tanaka family home, a different kind of reckoning was unfolding. Master Hiroshi Tanaka had not slept. He had spent the night in his study, surrounded by old photo albums and framed certificates, the artifacts of a lifetime dedicated to the martial arts. But the artifact that mattered most was a faded, sepia-toned photograph taken in 1947. It showed a young Okinawan man standing beside an American soldier, both of them bruised and smiling, arms slung over each other's shoulders. That soldier was a young Corporal James Webb, Marcus's grandfather. That Okinawan man was Takeshi Tanaka, Hiroshi's father. The two had met in the rubble of post-war Naha, where the American had saved the Okinawan from a gang of looters using nothing but his bare hands. They had trained together in secret, exchanging techniques in a makeshift dojo built from salvaged wood. The bond they forged had passed down through blood, unknown to both descendants. Until tonight, Hiroshi had found the photograph while digging through his father's belongings after his death, but he had never connected the name Webb to his quiet janitor. Now, as he stared at the young soldier's face, the resemblance was undeniable. The same steady eyes, the same economy of presence. Marcus Webb was not just a retired operator. He was the grandson of the man who had saved his father's life and who had taught him the very techniques that became the foundation of the Crescent Moon Dojo. The debt was older than he could have imagined, and his sons had just tried to destroy the man who carried that legacy. Hiroshi picked up his phone and dialed the number he had found among his father's papers. It rang twice before a gruff voice answered. Colonel Matthews. Colonel, this is Hiroshi Tanaka. You don't know me, but my father, Takeshi Tanaka, saved your life in Okinawa in 1972. You told him if he ever needed anything, this number would reach you. A long pause. I remember. Takeshi was a good man. What's happened? Hiroshi took a deep breath. My sons have falsely accused a man named Marcus Webb of assault. He's the grandson of James Webb. He's sitting in a holding cell right now because my children tried to destroy him. I need help making this right. The colonel's response was immediate and absolute. I'm on my way, and I'm bringing company. By dawn, the story had already begun to spread. Kyle and Kevin Tanaka had posted their carefully crafted narrative on social media, complete with edited photos and dramatic captions about a violent ex-soldier who had snapped and attacked them. The post garnered hundreds of shares within hours. Comments poured in, most of them condemning the mystery janitor, demanding justice. The twins watched from their apartment, smug and satisfied. But they had made a fatal miscalculation. They had underestimated the depth of their father's honor, and they had no idea that the man they had just slandered was connected to a network of individuals who had spent lifetimes protecting their own. At 7 in the morning, the police station received a phone call from the office of a United States Senator. The senator, a former Army Ranger, had been contacted by Colonel Matthews with a succinct summary of the situation. By 7:30, the department had received a fax from the Department of Defense verifying that Marcus Webb had served with distinction for 22 years in a classified special operations unit, and that any claim of unprovoked violence was inconsistent with his psychological profile and service record. By 8 o'clock, the security footage from the dojo, which Hiroshi had retrieved from the gym's hidden cameras, installed years ago to prevent insurance fraud, was in the hands of the lead investigator. It showed in high definition Kyle and Kevin initiating physical contact, cornering Marcus, shoving him, and grabbing his collar before he responded with the minimal force necessary to neutralize the threat. It also captured their father's entrance, his calm assessment, and his explicit statement that his sons were lying. The police chief, a pragmatic man who disliked being used, summoned Kyle and Kevin Tanaka back to the station under the pretense of taking additional statements. When they arrived, still basking in their perceived victory, they were instead met with the cold reality of a felony charge for filing a false police report. The color drained from their faces as the handcuffs clicked onto their wrists, the very same restraints they had gleefully watched being placed on the janitor just hours earlier. Kevin broke down in tears, babbling about how it was all his brother's idea. Kyle stood rigid, his eyes burning with the furious realization that he had lost everything. Marcus Webb was released from his holding cell at 9:15 in the morning. Colonel Matthews was waiting for him in the station lobby, a weathered man with a steel gray crew cut and a chest full of ribbons. The two men had never met before, but they recognized each other instantly, the silent brotherhood of warriors who had walked through fire and come out the other side. Your grandfather saved a good man in a ruined city 70 years ago, Matthew said. That debt just got paid forward. You're free. Marcus nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of the revelation. He had known his grandfather had served in the Pacific, but he had never heard the full story. It seemed the quiet life had deeper roots than he ever knew. The fallout was swift and absolute. Within 48 hours, the Crescent Moon Dojo had been transformed. Master Tanaka held a press conference in the dojo's main training hall, standing before a crowd of parents, students, and local reporters. He recounted everything without sparing a single detail: his son's entitlement, their assault on an innocent employee, their false accusations, and his own failure as a father. He took no refuge in pride. He laid the full weight of his shame before the community, and then he announced that the dojo would be placed under new management, with a renewed focus on the original principles of honor, respect, and self-defense taught by his father. And he offered Marcus Webb a permanent position, not as a janitor, but as a guest instructor in practical self-defense, should he ever choose to accept it. Marcus did not accept immediately. He needed time. The quiet life had been shattered, but a new kind of quiet was beginning to emerge. One not built on hiding, but on integration. The warrior and the janitor were no longer separate men. They were the same man, finally acknowledged, finally whole. On a cool autumn evening, 3 weeks after the arrest, Marcus returned to the dojo. The twins had pleaded guilty to lesser charges in exchange for community service and mandatory counseling, their black belts revoked. The dojo was quiet now, filled with a new generation of students who trained with humility. Master Tanaka was waiting for him on the mat, a wooden bakken resting across his palms. I have something for you, Tanaka said, extending the sword. This was my father's. He received it from an American soldier in gratitude, a soldier named James Webb. It belongs with you. Marcus took the bakken, feeling the smooth, worn wood beneath his fingers. For the first time in years, he allowed himself a small, genuine smile. The circle had closed, and the quiet life, he realized, had never really been about silence at all. It was about knowing when to speak and when to act, and finally, at long last, knowing that both could exist in the same man. The story of Marcus Webb is not just about one man's ability to dismantle 2 black belts in under 3 seconds. It is about the quiet power that walks among us every day, unnoticed and underestimated. The janitor in the corner, the father in the flannel shirt, the veteran who trades a rifle for a mop, not because he has lost his edge, but because he has chosen to sheath it. Real strength does not need an audience. It does not require a trophy case or a black belt around the waist. It rests in the discipline to remain invisible, and in the wisdom to act only when all other doors have closed. Master Tanaka learned a painful truth, that a lifetime of teaching martial arts means nothing if you fail to instill humility in your own children. The twins learned that arrogance is a brittle shield, easily shattered by someone who has been forged in far hotter fires. And Marcus Webb learned that hiding from your past does not erase it. Sometimes, the only way to honor the warrior within is to let him stand up, teach the lesson, and then sit back down. The question that lingers is this: how many other Marcus Webbs are out there, mopping floors, stocking shelves, driving buses, carrying the weight of unspeakable experiences behind a carefully constructed mask of normalcy? And what would happen if they were pushed too far? Not all of them would have a grandfather's debt to call in. Not all of them would have a security camera capturing the truth. The line between justice and catastrophe is often thinner than we think, held in place only by the self-control of people who have seen the abyss and chosen, every single day, to step back from its edge. If this story resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Have you ever witnessed someone underestimated reveal extraordinary strength? And if you believe that true power lies in restraint, not aggression, share this video with someone who needs that reminder. Hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more real-life stories of honor, humility, and the warriors hiding in plain sight.